Hola.
Hello.
Buenos días.
Good morning, Director General for the Public Service for Employment, European authorities and the Ministries for Labour and Social Economy, Immigration, Inclusion and Social Security, representatives of the social representatives of the agricultural sector, participants in this institutional meeting within the European ELAN campaign on seasonal work. My name is Mario Martin, Vice Director of Gardening and Trees, and on behalf of the Director, who excuses his absence because of his agenda, I welcome you to the Royal Botanical Garden, in the most oldest centre of scientific investigation, which is celebrating its 250th anniversary, and whose objective and its main point is to investigate, conserve, educate, and disseminate. Thanks to the CEPE, coordinator for the ELA European campaign, for choosing us for this institutional meeting, where we hope that you will feel as at home. We are in the plane tree area, and here you can notice the seasons and with the rights. All rights should never be temporary or depend on seasons, as our slogan says. I'll give the floor now to Mr. Gerardo Gutierrez, the Director of the Public Employment Service of Spain. Thank you very much. Well, thank you very much, Vice Director, for your presentation in this emblematic place. And good morning to you all, ladies and gentlemen. It's a real pleasure for me, as the Director General of the Public Service for State Employment, to welcome you into this institutional meeting with social representatives of the agricultural sector to reinforce the European campaign for awareness raising of rights for all seasons. And I would thank particularly the presence of Don Cosmin Eliao, Executive Director of the European Labour Authority. We know that his activity of launching ELA is frenetic, and we are thankful for his time and dedication in this meeting and the former visit that he had last week with the representatives in our country. Thank you for leading and beginning this campaign, which began on the 15th of June and begins and ends next month. Rights for all seasons, representatives of the Ministry of Labour and Social Economy, of the Ministry for Inclusion, Migrations, of the Social Security, and representatives of the social unions. We have joined together to promote this campaign. Particularly, I would like to thank also, and we will be participating in a subsequent roundtable, Javier Suquia as a liaison officer for Spain, Juan José Álvarez as Director General of ASAJA, Lorenzo Ramos as Director General of UAPA, Miguel Padilla as Secretary General of COAC, and also Pedro Ojos as Secretary General of the General Union of UGT FICA, and of course Garbiñe Espejo, Secretary General for the General Federation of Industry of Comisiones de Obreras. I also want to talk to the people who are seeing us live through the CEPE channel, and hope that this will be of interest to you, and of course all the people who are accompanying us with your physical presence in this marvelous place in Madrid, the Royal Botanical Gardens, which belongs, as we know, of the human heritage. And I would like to thank particularly the director for welcoming us, and the vice director who is also with us, and all the team who facilitated the organization of this event. I would like to expressly mention that the Royal Botanical Garden in Madrid, as you know, is within the investigation department, has been collaborating with us for a very long period, developing programs like employment workshops and school workshops, where we organize training and employment with a program which we call a tandem, and which we have as an investment to be funded by the projects by the Next Generation budget. And this will maintain the spirit of a program which was, as you well know, in its time encouraged work since a long time ago, and this sets the context for the type of things that we want to do with these kinds of programs. And these kinds of programs have with them involve learning, and to learn by doing with intelligent hands, the dignity of having your first employment, friendship, solidarity, and the pride of working as a team, the satisfaction of doing a good job. Today we're celebrating this event, this meeting, as part of the actions of the joint week of action in all countries with the best possible representation. In Spain, we've organized this institutional meeting with the social representative with two objectives: to maximize the impact of the campaign and reach a broader public, and encourage the collaboration of the European labour authorities with interlocutors in our country and international entities. The CEPE is participating actively for the rights of workers in all seasons, with training and dissemination through all of our channels. In the organization of this meeting, we've had the collaboration of Javier Suquia, as we mentioned before, of the Ministry of Labour and Social Economy, the Secretary Joaquín Pérez Rey, who will join us later, Carmen Collado, and I pass on my congratulations for recent appointment in inspection, and the collaboration of the Inclusion Ministry, represented today by Santiago Viegas as Director General of Migrations, who will also be speaking to you later. This institutional meeting was requested to us by the unions involved in the campaign, which have been involved since. And we, as representatives of the administration, it's been a pleasure to work shoulder to shoulder with everyone, so that the entity can be well known in the colloquium, the roundtable, which will be moderated by the subdirector for employment activities, who's a key protagonist of many of the things that are happening for good in the active employment policies. In this workshop, we will see actions supporting workers and employers in the agricultural industry, who and for the movement among different European countries. And I would like to thank the EUROS network in Spain. This is part of the CEPE's work and ELA, and we support cooperation between ELA and EURES in information, guidance, assessment to help mobility in work in Europe is done in a fair way with quality. The European Employment Services are working to facilitating the free movement of working people. This is a principle which is considered one of the most important of the citizens' rights of the European Union. Our work in this campaign as public employment services URIS is to disseminate and show the rights and obligations of workers and employees, as well as the conditions, the fair and safe conditions in the member states in the hiring stage. We do this through 100 advisors in Spain who participate from their positions of work in the employment offices. Their work is also supported by the materials that are supplied by the social actors. We have enlarged the network and created synergies, and this will help us in the future. Finally, I would like to mention two slogans from the campaign, which I think are particularly important. The right of seasonal worker is never out of season. The work can be seasonal. The rights of workers can be seasonal. And with this, I want to show that we are acting to guarantee the rights of seasonal working men and women, and we have to care for their rights in the work that they are given work all the time that we find ourselves in. So that the right of free movement is created in all the European Union. We need to ensure, first of all, equality. Equality in access to information and in achieving those fair and safe conditions. Freedom and equality always have to go hand in hand. And before giving the floor to Carmen Collado, Director General of the Inspection Department, I would like to also thank once more the Minister for Labour and Social Economy and Vice President of the government, Yolanda Díaz, who's had to excuse she was not able to come because of her agenda, but her commitment and dedication for this campaign. She has asked us to forgive her for her absence. Would like to thank Cosmin Banyu, the Executive Director, for the effort made by him to be here. And thank you very much, and I'll give the floor now to Carmen. Well, first of all, I would like to thank all of those of you who have participated here in this meeting. For me and for the entity that I represent, the campaign of European Labour Authority and the platform against forced labour has particular importance for me personally. I think I come from an autonomous community, a region of Spain, where work is a potential in the agricultural sector, and that's Valencia, that's the region, and the seasonal work is extremely important. And so in this context, for me, it is fundamental to have this meeting with the unions and with the employer associations, because I know this sector very well and the problems that surround it, and for many reasons, therefore. The first one, because this campaign acknowledges that there is a reality which needs to be dealt with, and that is that we have a problem in our sector. In order to resolve problems, the first thing that we have to do is to acknowledge that those problems exist and analyze them, and therefore to be able to take the appropriate measures in order to combat them. The campaign slogan gives us an indication of what the problem is, which we say rights for all seasons, where somehow we're seeing that there are situations where working people who travel through the European Union in this sector, there are cases where their rights are not being respected, and thousands of working people travel through the European Union in order to find employment. And this occurs. They travel, they're particularly vulnerable, not only because of this inherent seasonality of any seasonal work, but also because they go to a place where they don't normally reside. Sometimes they don't know the language, and undoubtedly they don't know the structures, the legal structures, for instance, and of trade union representation that could help us to ensure their rights. And in the meetings in which I've been able to participate in order to organize this campaign, I've been able to extract two elementary conclusions, and very basic. It gives us an idea of the size of all of this. One is that the problem exists and that this problem not just in Spain. It doesn't belong to France or Italy or any particular country. It's a European Union problem. It's a problem for all of us. And so therefore, we all must take measures in order to combat it. And that is, and the other very elemental and basic point is that the breaking of the rights of seasonal workers, when they occur normally, most of the time, and this is something that comes up in meetings a lot, that does not occur in the farms or in companies that are owners of the farms. So most of the cases occur in those companies that intervene in contributing labor, service companies or temporary labor companies. We're trying to do a diagnosis of the situation. These are intermediaries that supply the owners of the farms labor when in the season they temporarily need to increase their workers. And these are basic things, but we also can see the difficulties to combat this. One, from a trade union point of view. Now, I'm saying this, I'm going to make the most of the fact that there are trade unions represented here and employers. Why? Because these people will have difficulties to join the union organizations in the countries where they're providing their service. They're not going to participate in the election processes or choosing delegates in the unions. And so these structures that we have in countries that are designed to protect working people have difficulties in order to reach them, and there's another series of difficulties, and therefore their collaboration. Wanting to find out how people from elsewhere work in the local companies, that's important. It's a call for collaboration in this way. And from the business point of view, the owners of the farms do not have the direct legal relationship with these people, with workers, the temporary workers. And also, this means that surveillance is relaxed more than it should be. And I remember in an action where we observed irregularities of this kind, and the company said, that's the way it is, this is truth. And you chide them and you say, well, you hired someone that is the hiring company, and the price that was offered to them, if you should know, you could out that it's impossible for that company to fulfill labor rights just because of the price that has been offered for providing the service. The companies recognize that, but at the same time they say, well, this is the same in the entire industry, in the sector, because if I don't do this, I'm not competitive. I won't be able to. I will lose competitiveness, and the company will go under. And so I think that what we have to call on the social responsibility of companies, of enterprise, without any other understanding that with that argument there's no reason lacking, but that the commitment is one that belongs to all of us, and the administration also has to supervise this. And the labor inspection department also undoubtedly has to play its part, and we have a particular commitment to control these situations, but undoubtedly it is the companies and organizations, the trade unions also, in meetings like this. I think they can work together because it is a responsibility for everybody, and also each one has their area of responsibility and therefore cooperating to be able to combat situations, possible situations which are more or less exceptional, however, nevertheless do occur and have to be dealt with. And also the administration, the government, has to assess, disseminate, give information about rights. That is more the responsibility that is done by the SEP the CEPE, and they do that fantastically well, I think. And I would like to finish with this. I would like to listen to you about the commitment on behalf of everybody to making this a reality, so that the freedom of movement is also freedom of equality and of freedom of rights. Thank you very much indeed.
Hello, good morning, everybody. It's a great pleasure to be able to recognize some of the faces that I see amongst us as people who truly make an effort every day to defend not just the rights of workers, but also to collaborate to make this country and this society a bit richer. And I want to thank the ministry for inviting me to this event on seasonal labor. And I want to celebrate the participation of social agents with the ministry that I represent here, especially the migrations unit. And as you know, are constantly in touch with them. Well, talking about seasonal working without rights are it's impossible. So the needs of many countries, including many European countries, that this is a bi-directional process that has to ensure all the interests are at play, and especially the rights of our foreign citizens. The pandemic has been a perfect showcase for public administrations, social agents, and society as a whole. And almost 1 million citizens of the European Union, according to data from ELA, do seasonal work in the agricultural sector. People who want to have the right to move freely within the European Union and carry out the seasonal work, who are protected by the rights provided by the European Union, given that they are citizens of the European Union. But we must not forget that with this million people, or the hundreds of thousands of people come from outside of the European Union, and they are not protected, and they are not under the umbrella provided by the European law, given that they are subject to the regulations of each of their independent states. And protection must be the same for all, irrespective of their country of origin. And that's the effort we must demand, starting with the migration department and followed by all the other departments and all social agents. In the agricultural sector, we favor circular projects, circular economy projects, but we must also improve the information provided to workers, lodging that's acceptable, adapting contracts to the law. And those aren't just elements that contribute to the protection of workers. They also make this labor, provides dignity to this labor, and that has an impact in national and international labor markets. We must also learn from the good practices carried out in other member states to improve cooperation and coordination between all actors. And I wish this session is as fruitful as possible. I want to finish my words by encouraging all of us to walk this path together, so we can change the seasonal character of these workers. They are just work beyond any other adjective we want to add to their name. Thank you. And to talk about how the ELA campaign has worked in Spain, I'm going to give the word to Javier Suchiareta, in charge of ELE here in Spain.
Buenos días.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody, dear friends, colleagues, authorities. I want to mention the director of ELA, Cosmin, who came, he's here today and is going to Switzerland today as well. So I think, I think we must mention his effort. And of course, I want to thank all the authorities and members of different ministries that are here today and social actors as well. Without them, as well, say next, this campaign and what ELA can do would probably make very little sense. And I'm going to mention what ELA is and explain why we're carrying out this campaign. Free movement of workers and the free provision of services, those are basic elements of the European Union. And it says that the treaty says that we have to work to create a social and market economy that contributes to full employment, social progress, encourage social protection and justice and equality between men and women, solidarity, intergenerational solidarity, and fight against discrimination and exploitation. So 20 million European workers move within the European Union borders to carry out temporary jobs or work every day. Maybe they live close to a border and move on their own or with their families, and maybe walking with a truck or with a lorry. So that's another 2 million people who walk like that in Europe. So all this group of people are the objective of the actions of the European Labour Authority. These 20 million citizens and workers, men and women, are the ones to whom the ELA is addressing these campaigns and actions. And what's the European Labour Authority? I'll call it ELA. I would just say the name in English all the time, in Spanish even. But the European Labour Authority, the creation's been fully supported by Spain since it started. Started working by mid last year and January this year. We already started having a proper structure, but still working online. The main offices, the headquarters are in. We started working in last week, so we are really starting now. But although this work has started in the past few months, the fact that movement is free has was been a reason to launch this campaign to favor access to information, as was already mentioned, to all the workers who are involved in this campaign, but in all the other sectors as well in Europe, to improve cooperation between member states. And I will mention how I believe that's improving. Also mediate in the case there are legal issues, and also contribute to cooperation to avoid workers who are without a contract within the European Union. So that's done with a series of workers within the European Labour Authority, and part of these workers are liaison officers. I am one of them, and they are appointed by each country. There are 27, and that's our function, to link one country to another and pick up the phone and call somebody else and say this is what we want to do, or the different authorities from the European Labour Authority with the ministries that are working on this topic. So I'll start talking about this campaign. Why did we launch this campaign? Why did the European Labour Authority launch this campaign, and why did member states, among which we can find Spain, wanted to launch this campaign? Because European institutions are concerned about the high mobility of seasonal workers and the pandemic as well. that added new challenges. If we thought we had few, given the very harsh work they carry out, and well, I've been an inspector, labor inspector, for 36 years, so I know the situations in which many of these jobs are carried out, and also workers coming from third countries, as my colleagues mentioned, also not knowing languages and the rights of those countries, and vulnerability, which always bring about abuse. And the support of the labor ministry and the support of the employment service and the support of different institutions, social security, and the support of all the institutions in our country have been essential to make sure this campaign could be launched, and also the support of social actors. The campaign has two different layers. One of them is information. I'm not going to say anything about it. All those of you here are working on it. And there's another part of this campaign, and some of you are also developing that task, which is control. So you inform first, and then that has to be monitored, or at the same time. For you, just to give you some information, we've got two inspectors from Valencia. Carmen was in charge of the office. Now she's our director. She's my boss. And so, well, I want to congratulate her on her appointment, and I'm very happy because now she's got more responsibilities, but she will keep on working hard. And there are 4 civil servants. It's the only organization in Europe like this, and the director knows this is the only case in Europe. We've got the EU mobility. We've got it's a Spanish agency, 4 inspectors, and they deal with everything that has to do with the European Labour Authority, and that is a big effort carried out by the ministry. Why? Because we are fully committed. We can move freely, workers and those who are providing services as well. Thank you very much. Good morning. Because as you know, we're streaming these on YouTube.
Ya, vale. Hay que separarlas un poco más. Bueno, esto es como una especie de mini descanso.
This is sort of a mini break while everyone's mic'd. So.
Y aunque vamos con un poco.
And although we are running a bit late, as we normally happens in this event, because we started 15 minutes late, we will try to make up for that time without. But we would really have to give the time to those people who are the protagonists today. So if you're ready, let's start. This is roundtable. the roundtable that's been called Social Agents in the European Labor Authority campaign, and we're going to have Mr. José Álvarez Alcalde. He is the Director General of ASAJA, so from the Association of Young Farmers. Lorenzo Ramos Silva, he's Secretary General of the Union of Small Farmers. Miguel Padilla Campoy, Secretary of Organization of COAG, and the two unions, Garbiñe Espejo Cairo, Secretary General of the Federation of Industry of Comisiones Obreras, and Mr. Pedro Hojas from UGT FICA. And I don't want to waste any more time, because I will try to extract some conclusions at the end of this roundtable, but I do want to honor and want to thank, because I believe that the most important thing about this event and this campaign is precisely the participation of all the farmers associations. I think that's a huge commitment in a sector in which we are aware of the needs and the challenges you're facing, and also the support you need to get. That's all to you. Having you here today, being committed with us, from farmers associations and unions, I believe that's the most important contribution that Spain can provide to the European campaign, Cosmin. So I'm going to give the floor to Mr. Alcalde. Thank you. Yes, can you hear me? Good morning. First of all, in this, it says Pedro Barato here, President of ASAJA, and that's, that's all my name. Pedro is a more handsome man than I am, but unfortunately he couldn't make it, so he had to cancel last minute. But he wanted to support you as well in this campaign. That's extremely important for us. So thank you for inviting us and for the work you're carrying out in this very important campaign carried out by the European Labour Authority. And, well, as a farmers association organization, because you don't know, ASAJA is the Association of Young Farmers, and we are an employers association that's part of the confederation in CEOE, so in the National Employers Association. So we are employers. And the new director of inspection, well, congratulations on your on being appointed, and best wishes in this very hard task. That's an issue that requires the commitment of all the actors involved, and that's how it should be: commitment by all the social actors, and the Ministry of Employment has already been involved, and also involving the Social Security through our director, Santiago. He already knows us, and we work very closely with them. But I am missing in this campaign, and this morning, the Ministry of Agriculture. Why? Because we are part of the agri-food sector. That's what we represent, and the Ministry of Agriculture should have something to say about this as well, because we are an essential sector, as we've seen and as we've been said, and we've been essential throughout all the pandemics since it started. And our sector guaranteed food for all our citizens, and ensuring this food safety and provision. So we haven't had a scarcity in any of the supermarkets, and we feed the population every day. So the Ministry of Agriculture should have had something to say. And the slogan of this campaign talks about rights for all seasons. And one of the things they say is informed seasonal workers about their rights, supports employers, and guarantees fair working conditions in the European Union. So those who are in charge of this campaign send this message of trust about employers, and also around employees associations and farmers associations, and I want to thank you for having that trust and trusting us. Although it also seems that they, well, in this case, they asked for their collaboration of ASAJA, UPA, and COP. So there's a, well, they're calling the unions to make sure workers are informed about the risk of abuse in these campaigns, because they are thought to be especially vulnerable. And we must take into account that the objective of the campaign, as it's been mentioned, more focuses on transport and movement of international workers, not all of the seasonal working that's wider. And I also want to mention something else, which is that we must take into account that in our country there's a very important number of workers, seasonal workers, who move within our national borders. Spanish workers and also foreign workers. Although we are aware that the labor authority, National Labor Authority, is monitoring seasonal workers more and more. And we have seen that in the well, we have seen not as much trust in the last seasons, and given that the monitoring of labor conditions have been extremely hard and the work of inspectors have been very harsh on our organizations, we must not forget that the agricultural sector has also received foreign workers. This workforce has been very welcome. And so what's happening? In many cases, they say that there are Spanish workers that are willing to work in these seasonal campaigns, but not as many as the ones that could participate. And in fact, in some cases, we haven't got enough workforce and workers. So we have had to hire foreign workers, as you all know.
So even there was the case even last season of having subsidies for people in the neighboring region to be able to come and work because of the pandemic and the restrictions between one region and another. But these are subsidiary ways of making compatible the labor. Those who belong to Saja give temporary workers, large numbers of them, and temporary workers also the temporariness, which the General Director mentioned also, and seasonality is extremely important in our work in the countryside. Why am I saying this? Because lately, on behalf of the government, what is at stake is the hiring of seasonal workers and temporary work in a sector which gives seasonal and temporary work. There are also permanent workers, but they are a minority. Everything has worked well up until now with hiring at source in the DNA of enterprise in Saja DNA. We have been working for many years with hiring foreign workers who require extra protection, and we want to guarantee the best for those workers in our farms with decent accommodation, salaries that have been agreed with the unions in the collective agreements of our provinces, and by providing the best possible planning and the best possible environment so that these workers are able to work in the best possible conditions in our farms. As you all know, I do not want to talk for too long because hiring at source, as you know, has been done for many years now, and this is how we've been working. I do miss this year the order of migratory flows, which is very important in order to carry out this work, because this has been very important for employers to do things well, and that's what we try to do things well. I'm going to round off now because I would like to talk a little bit about the present as an agricultural organization, and I'm proud always have been able to accompany companies in the farming sector in the organization of the seasonal campaigns and the coverage that has been given to workers, hiring people from specific countries. And how have we done this? By support, technically and institutionally support the problems of within the legality, obviously, and looking for new tools adapted to the needs and restrictions, particularly with the pandemic caused by COVID-19. Also, to inform about labor obligations and social security in order to fulfill what is established in the collective agreements, and the majority of the collective agreements signed by SAJA. And also to make progress in the prevention of hazards and risks, where SAJA has been proactive before COVID and even more so since then. And particularly to insist on the importance of covering the requirements of accommodation laid down in the commitments established in the regulations of hiring at source, and to warn of the need to fulfill with health and safety and accommodation. And we have to recognize the work of Spanish farms and on agricultural entrepreneurs, and that it should not be stained by some critical cases which are repulsed by society and institutions, are not the majority of the representatives of agricultural entrepreneurs. Also, the representative of the United Nations came, and we felt somehow criminalized because of some of the actions that had arisen and in the inspection campaigns that took place in our country, with very complicated questionnaires for the entrepreneurs, where we were branded as exploiters, and in Andalusia, and I don't want to get more publicity, but it said that entrepreneurs were exploiters of workers from other countries, and that's not the case. And furthermore, this policy meant that Spanish produce was not consumed in the UK because they said we were accused of exploiters. So we have to give solutions, and the countryside in Spain already has enough problems. And now, what are the challenges for the future in seasonal work? Well, of course, we have to have transparency and news neutrality. Particularly, the public powers have to contribute to give an image of a sector that conveys trust and confidence to citizens without confusing citizens with attacks or unjustified attacks in the hardest times of the pandemic. And that has not been the case on the news reports. There were always farms and workers who were illegal people in Spain who had nothing to do with our farms. So please, we have to provide the real news, and we've maintained that safety and security and all the conditions so that all the foreign workers could come and Spanish workers, guaranteeing health in the case of the pandemic. With the appropriate inspection given by the department, can generate mistrust in the sector. And what we have to know is the reality and not to create more problems. And of course, we have to conserve the hiring formula that exists right now. That is hiring for campaigns, seasons, temporary and seasonal hiring, which is necessary for our campaigns at this moment in time. We're looking for solutions among us all, and we do not want problems. The solutions have to be resolved by the administration, by the European authority, the Spanish authorities, and all the people here, the union representatives, social representatives. And also, I would like to finish now my presentation, because we are in the format of a labour format, and there are union representatives and government representatives, in order to manifest today, on Monday, the 20th of September, the disagreement of the organization that I lead to the hype of the minimum wage in our country. It's a key moment for the countryside that needs support and not more problems. We were looking for fair prices and out on the street, and we will continue to claim fair prices. This is complicated, where we have a new European agricultural policy which is going to reduce income or revenues for entrepreneurs, and we need solutions and not problems, and not an increase in costs. We already have a cost increase with the electricity prices and of all sorts, and apart from salaries, there'll be contributions to social security that'll be increased, and so therefore what we need is solutions. I do not go against minimum wage rise. Workers need to have the necessary wage and the best possible wage, and we have to help to do that. But also, I would like a royal decree in which we could say that farmers cannot sell our products below the production cost. That is also necessary. Thank you very much. Well, as you can see, Juan José has not minced his words, and so thank you very much for being with us and for presenting your positions, the positions of Asaja. And I think being here too brings us closer to the idea, as you said, the need for fair prices for the farming sector, which is essential in Spain, and of course, undoubtedly, fair salaries and wages. Lorenzo, you have the floor for the Union of Small Farmers. Hello, thank you very much. Good morning to you all, and thank you to the State Employment Service and the European Labour Authority for inviting us to participate in this campaign on the rights of workers in the agricultural sector. As you know, the countryside is a sector with its own peculiarities. I haven't spoken all morning, and now I have a bit of a cough, so please forgive me if I take a little bit of water, drink a little bit of water to clear my throat. So, and this, we need the intensive use of seasonal labor depending on the farming season. And the success of these campaigns is thanks to the work of the men and women who year after year have worked with us in our farms. In our organization, we are an association, and we live in our villages, and when we have to harvest, and we hire workers around us, our family members, our neighbors. When you need workers from more workers than from nearby villages, and then from other regions in Spain, and then from other European Union and other countries in the world. That is why our organization participates actively in the management of the hiring of temporary labor in the farming sector in the internal market, as well as from other countries. And in the latter, we participate yearly together with the Ministry for Social Inclusion and other union representatives in planning of the hiring at source. And we have signed the agreement for organization and social and labor integration of labor flows in agricultural flows, where we guarantee the full compliance of the rights of workers, men and women, in their work and in their accommodation that they use whilst they're in our country. And we have to point out that the main agricultural campaigns with migratory flows and that are higher, well, there's Huelva, the region of Huelva with citrus and nuts, the region of Lleida, the Balearic Islands, Segovia with strawberries and raspberries, and the province with the greatest demand and need for foreign employment is Huelva. And for the campaign of berries, we have workers from Morocco because it is a neighboring country. As you can imagine, in the campaign this year and last year, the health crisis caused by COVID I've lost my place in the page, says the gentleman. Complicated this management, and that is why our organization has talked with the authorities in our country and with the Moroccan authorities also, in order so that the workers can go back home in a safe way within the established time periods. And we think it is fundamental to continue to having fluid communication between the administration and the agricultural organization. This is the way of jointly ensuring the complete compliance and fulfillment of the rights of all workers, men and women, generating security among them and among the farmers that hire them. And we ensure that the agreements, labor agreements, are complied in all the regions. And we also have signed that agreement. We are family-size farmers in our association. We need seasonal workers, and that is why we are the first to be interested in offering dignified conditions for these men and women workers and we will need them one season after another. And with the workers, I would like to say that we hire, we are working with them shoulder to shoulder every day. There is no leaders, and so we're working all hours together with them, and there's no foreman. And the problem is not getting them to have a higher minimum wage. What we need is that we should be paid a dignified price for our produce. And what is shameful in our country is that there are a number of people, particularly speculators and intermediaries, and from certain companies who do not want to comply with the law that is already enforced and who have to pay the farmers and cattle farmers what they have to produce. And we have to have dignified conditions because we, as autonomous, self-employed, we have to fulfill all aspects. And this has to be clear that these workers have and will have a key role in the fight against the depopulation of the rural countryside and of farms. And with regards to the groups of people who are hired at source, it is fundamental to help them in their integration in our country. And for them, we have carried out projects in order to ensure they can see how they can achieve that. They have to feel comfortable in our farms so that we can continue to hire them in future years. And specifically the UPA project, which was developed last year, and where the role of migrating people was to help their integration there. They analyzed the role that these immigrants had in the fight against the loss of population of the countryside. And we all know that the presence of migrant people in the countryside in Spain is a reality which is bigger, dependent on the region, and it is directly related to the primary sector. The area where there's a greater presence of migrants is where agriculture has a bigger specific weight in the economy, and therefore there is a greater need for labor in this sector. And this need for labor is often temporary, depending on the agricultural campaigns. And in many Spanish provinces, the migration flows has increased in recent years, but it hasn't been sufficient in order to make up for the populational shortcomings of the villages around Spain. The role of the migrants is very important, but it is also very important, the role of the employers. And the project shows the reality that affects the migrants and the rural autochthonous workers and the problems that they have on both sides. And so this project is useful for foreign workers as well as our own national seasonal workers, or those who come from the European Union, so that the foreign population to be settled in a place they have to have be well rooted, and so when there's a worsening of the economic conditions of the country, they can maintain their stability, of the importance of being properly based, and the conditions of living can be equivalent to any other inhabitant from where they come from. And the starting of any initiative whose end is important because the migrant population has to be accompanied, and making the way here smoother, it becomes transcendental in order to revert the phenomenon of depopulation. In the initiatives in the project, if there are some, like the generation of employment, stressing particularly with what is linked to agriculture and livestock farming as essential sectors for sustainability socioeconomically and environmentally. And so family agriculture or farming is the optimal model, and it covers all the farmers who live in the countryside and who get their income or revenue from the work done there. This generates stable and temporary work, and it sustains the environment with extensive farming and with quality of farming. Other initiatives by reducing the bureaucracy in getting into the sector, an improvement of the fiscal measures. But one most important challenge was to achieve the consolidation of those who come and their permanence in the country with their families, with a strong adaptation to the rural environment. This was conditioned very often by the integration of the family that comes with them, and their children even more so. Depending on the country of origin or the region that we're talking about, there were various materials, accessible materials we were given through the website and UPA to help the administration and society in general, and first of all to be aware of the real situation that affects immigrants and rural autochthonous workers, and to resolve the doubts and the problems that they face. And there were 2 videos that were made that show illustrative lives of migrant people and their relationship with farmers and livestock farmers in Spain. With regards to the training, we've seen that this is one of the shortcomings that occurs the most in the countryside, particularly professional training that is adapted to the particular environment. Migrant people pointed out problems with the language, particularly when they had the professional skills required for the work in the countryside and farms. This is one of the main difficulties that they found for enabling the integration in UPA, with a concern for that training and seeing this as one of the most important factors for their integration in the world of labor. We've been participating for many years in training programs made by the Ministry of Agriculture and through the pluri-regional training programs, or with the European or the state employment service for the training in employment. And UPA, therefore, offers workers an adapted type of training, adapted to the needs of the market, company competitivity, and aspirations, so that they can carry out their work professionally. Since 2011 through the pluri-regional programs or with FUNDAE. We have trained more than 43,000 workers in the agricultural sector. We believe that training is the fundamental pillar for all the actors, and particularly including the seasonal workers, and the lack of accidents of work are not going down, but they are increasing. And so we have been working many years now doing prevention projects for work hazards in the agriculture sector to offer workers the keys in order to maintain their safety in their work in the countries, with projects like agri-food, in order to raise awareness of farmers, of reinforcing preventive measures in the running of farms. There were 6 monographies that were drawn up, like muscular disorders or the prevention of risks to particular phytosanitary products. There were informative meetings throughout Spain where they talked about prevention for farmers and livestock farmers, and there were videos and campaigns. There was a website also, and there was even an app. And this was all to raise awareness of farm workers in the risks that they are subjected to on a daily basis. This is all that I had to say, and I'm open to any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Muchísimas gracias, Lorenzo.
Thank you, Lorenzo. Well, sustainable by nature. That's great. And thank you for all your proposals and all the issues that you've put on the table, starting with importance of training and safety and security, and also helping you keep those towns alive and family farmers. And from our side, we have tried to help with everything that has to do with training in the countryside through the new program for young people, because we are aware that for the 2021-2027 plan in the European Union, we are aware of the importance of training in agricultural skills, and also within the European resilience plan presented by the government of Spain, we will deploy a very important training program to address especially women in rural areas. And I believe that's going to have a huge impact, because that's another of the gaps we have to try to bridge. And we are aware of the importance of women in our territories and rural areas. And without further ado, I'm going to give the floor to Mr. Miguel Padilla-Campoy, Secretary of Organization of COAG. You've got the floor, Miguel. Good morning. I want to thank the Spanish Service of Employment and ELA for inviting our organization. The first thing I must say is that the support that organization is supporting this campaign, as well as all the other initiatives carried out at a national level, because we believe they are needed. And of course, the collaboration of our association in this campaign, and also the national campaigns, has been seen in all the work we have done and all the work that we keep all doing. So I want to thank first the invitation, and also this important, but our organization is what tries to coordinate farmer organizations made up by medium and small companies and enterprises. And they require labor, and given the seasonal seasonal nature of this labor that's required. Well, of course, you are true experts on what temporary workers and non-temporary workers are, but in many cases we talk about the reality of the countryside, and the countryside is has very specific characteristics. Excuse me, we have an issues with the speaker sound. He's getting a new mic. I'm sure. Can you hear me now? Yes. Okay. As I was saying, the reality of agriculture and farming has aspects that are very important, and they should be known to understand the reality of labor. We have a very wide diversity of crops and productions and products. I believe this is the only, or one of the only activities with a very important risk of due to weather, and we're also impacted by the different diseases that arrive to our countryside, and even to program seasonal campaigns, and in many cases very short campaigns. It's very hard to know what's going to happen, because if you have adverse weather or bad weather, you might be think that you're going to need workers for 3 months, but this weather means that we only need labor for a month or even 2 weeks. So that's a very specific risk in the agricultural sector. As we always say, we are in the outside and we have to face whatever comes. It is true that within the national framework we have different realities. If we talk about Murcia, southeast of Spain, well, there is much, we have less seasonal needs because, well, we have less temporary workers. Some of the main campaigns last for 11, 12 months. So in some of the cases in Catalonia or Huelva, well, those campaigns take only a few months. So we must make a difference between very short campaigns, extremely seasonal, and those in those cases in which people work in the sector for 10 months. It is true that there are 2 months in which there's no work. So those workers who are out of a job, in 2 months they might go elsewhere and work in other campaigns. But we've got 1 week campaigns. We've got 1 week campaigns as well, and 10-month campaigns or 11-month campaigns. So that's something that we must realize when we try to understand the issues that arise in these situations. I will now mention what happened in the late 90s and early 2000s, which is hybrid outsource. And it is true that most of our labor force comes from other countries, and we must say something that well, sometimes we're criticized because people don't know our reality. If we didn't have that foreign labor force, most of the production just wouldn't exist. So we must be serious when talking about migrations. Today, migrant workers are a reality, and 90% of the work done in the countryside, seasonal work mainly, is done by these people who come from other countries. So that's very important for us. Seasonal or temporary work has many different issues. In some cases, it's very well, those difficulties have to be faced by the farmer or the employer. In this case, a series of requirements that have to be met, and in many cases that's not easy to understand. It's not hard to understand that they have to be fulfilled. I mean, but understanding how it should be done. So a contract and those, linking different campaigns from one area to another to make it easier for farmers and workers to work on the one hand and get that work done for the others. And that's very hard to do in some areas, in some months in the year. Also logic as well. That's, of course, the fact that the work is seasonal doesn't mean that people can have a safe environment. So it's people who work for 10 or 11 months, they're deeply rooted in that area, and they live there just like any other worker in areas because that's their main area of work. But those who come from elsewhere for a week or a month or 2 months, they need that lodging and to be provided for them. So everything has to do with safety and security, and there are many other social aspects that are essential. Sometimes we only look at 3 things: contract, lodging. Of course, they are essential, but there are many other factors that have a huge impact on that work, and in many cases, though, they are labor and social aspects that go a bit beyond the knowledge of those involved. I must say that in our bylaws, the bylaws of our organization, there are 2 articles that talk about equality between men and women, and also there's another article that mentions working conditions. Of course, what we call the dignity of working conditions. And I just want to mention a bit of our history and our experience on the needs and what we've been able to contribute with to the seasonal works. We created back in the 90s what we called Migration and Labor Relations Office, and this is just an anecdote. I was in charge of that area because I just got there, and normally you were in charge of those areas. Those who just got there were in charge of areas that were not as important. That was back in 1999, and in 2001 there was a huge growth of labor needs. So there was a huge need of labor in the Spanish countryside, and that's when we started hiring outsource. After 20 years of that experience, well, that's when we started. And hiring at origin, that's what there were 3 requirements that were suggested by our organization and that we approved by the ministry. Those were the requirements to be able to hire people from other countries. Back in the day, they were coming from Ecuador and Colombia, mainly Ecuador, also from Morocco. Also coming from Morocco, there was a very important flow of workers. There were things that were not nice at all. We had to go to Ecuador. In this case, we had to go to Quito to hire them, and we should realize, imagine that when they heard in Ecuador that people from Spain were coming there to hire people, and it was very sad. We could have 3,000 people, and maybe we had 600 contracts. So to be able to bring 600 contracts from Ecuador, and that's what the legal requirements were. And so 2,400 people who had spent 3 days or nights traveling from the villages or towns to the capital had to go back with nothing at all. So that was, well, very, very unpleasant, really. So this was very important back in the 1990s, early 2000s, but this need has, it's slower now, and now you cannot focus on hiring at origin, because back in those years we were talking about a very high amount of people. Then we had people, a voluntary comeback and things like that. So these dates today are much lower. We're talking about 16,000 workers and about 15,000 workers out by at Huelva to pick up strawberries. And so most of the temporary hiring we've got today are people who live in our country. There's only a very small amount that's hire outsource. And I'm saying this because I will mention, the migration table. That's been extremely important. Still is very important. And according to just like my colleagues mentioned, we have carried out 17 campaigns, and 17 campaigns to raise awareness on labor conditions in agriculture and farming. And we have had many roundtables and materials. Now we have a website in which we are promoting the campaign we are talking about today. And of course, we will keep on working. We'll keep on working and put all our attention to in this campaign. So I don't know how we're doing with time. We haven't got time, right? Okay, just one more thing. This migration table, this is a request. So this migration table, we mentioned that's been extremely important to solve different situations. Well, this request, if possible, we should have a national employment office to be able to tackle many issues and besides immigration and workers, to be able to tackle other aspects are extremely important for us. So an employment conversation, probably headed by the Secretary of State of Employment, to involve all the agents and solve issues that are hard to solve. Sorry. Thank you very much. Thank you, Miguel. And we're going to have the Secretary of State of Employment, so he's going to be here live. So your latest request is going to be there on the table as well. Just a small change, but to make sure Garbiña and Miguel haven't got enough time, let's give the floor to the director of ELA because he's got a flight. So I'm sorry, but I'm sure you'll understand. So Cosmin, please. Yes, go ahead, Pedro. We wait because we had to say. I mean, we wanted him to listen to what we had to say. So please, because otherwise, Pedro, we had the employers, and it's very important for you to listen to what worker representatives have to say. Sure. Let's see. Let's let him speak, and we'll see if he has enough time to listen. But I'm sorry, Pedro. You're right, but I've been asked to make because otherwise he might not be able to get to the airport on time.
Ya, oye, que no me... Hello, hola, and buen día.
Hello, good morning.
So that's why I want to give you time to adjust or to take your translation devices. So I'm very happy to be here today in Madrid, in Spain, for this important campaign. It's the Action Week that we are organizing all over Europe from the ELA. I won't speak long because we want to really translate our activity into action, not into words necessarily, but also because I want to stay a little bit longer. I have indeed a flight to catch. I'm going to Sweden afterwards, continue my tour, but I want to listen exactly to also to the words from the workers and trade unions. So, very briefly, I'm very happy to be here. We couldn't find a better day and a better place to have this emphasis on the campaign for seasonal workers. And I'm happy to be here for three reasons, mainly. First of all, Spain is one of the most active countries in relation to the LA. To the authority that I'm running, not only with this, but especially with this campaign, it was a great support and great implementation. I have figures here, I won't quote them, but Spain is indeed one of the most active promoters of this campaign in Europe, and that's very important. Second, we made a pledge, we made a commitment that we will be present in the field, and that's what we want. We don't want to sit in the headquarters, we want to be present in the field, in the countries, in the regions where the real problems are. So you will see us a lot, you will see us here, we will work together very closely because we want to be very operational, we want to be very action-oriented. As I said in the beginning, less words and more action. And third, I'm also happy to be here because it's an action done with social partners. And that is very important. We work very close with national administrations, but our partners and the most natural, let's say, actors in our work are the social partners, because you are in the closest contact with our ultimate beneficiaries. Because our ultimate beneficiaries are the citizens, the workers, and the companies, the employers. They have to see in our action that they are protected everywhere in Europe, not only on the national territory, but wherever they go in Europe to work for a worker or to provide services for a company. And that is our job, and that's why we want to work very closely with social partners to both have input about the needs of your, let's say, constituencies, but also for the output, for the delivery of our actions. So that's why it's very important to work very closely with social partners. Now, a little bit about this campaign and this action plan. Why we chose seasonal workers. This is our first operational or comprehensive operational plan and comprehensive operation. And we chose seasonal work because it was one of the most vulnerable categories during the pandemic. Both workers and companies were vulnerable, especially in this sector. Companies needed workers, and they didn't have. And workers needed their rights to be respected. They needed to know, especially when we have these difficult conditions, you need to know that you go in a safe place to work, secure place. So that's why we chose this category, this sector to concentrate on. And we started with the comprehensive action plan. And this is how we would like all operations to be in the future, all our operations. And I will speak very little about how we see these operations, exactly like the seasonal workers campaign was done. We would like them to be simultaneous, and that's the beauty of the ELA. We would like them to multiply their impact in Europe, to go to the, let's say, most, let's say, local level. And then we would like them to be integrated and comprehensive. Simultaneous, that's the beauty of what we are doing. That's the beauty of the authority for labor, European Labor Authority, that we can stimulate simultaneous action on one issue in many countries, not in just one country, and that you can follow things through. And this is how citizens and workers, our citizens will see, our companies will see that they are protected everywhere in Europe. If the same action, the same message goes at the same time in Sweden, in Slovakia, or in Spain, with the same words and the same type of action. Second, we said about multiplication. This is what we are noticing now, and my heart really grows when I see actions happening in Spain, in Portugal, in Cyprus, in Romania, in Germany. Countries take this campaign, these messages, but then they add their own. And they multiply these effects, and you see, you here in Spain, you take it down to the regions, to all regions, then to lower levels, so the message and the impact is multiplied. So this is how we would like to see. Third, integration. We don't only do information campaigns or awareness raising, we also couple this with inspections, with control, because we want, on one hand, to give information about their rights to workers, to give information about their obligations and rights to companies, to employers, but we also want to verify that these are respected, because that's the essence. We also do this, we do also a risk assessment at the level of the EU. We also do capacity building and so on. So it's an integrated operations that we would like to see. We now have, for example, we started inspections. We have also, and I see everywhere going on, for example, joint inspection we've done with France and Spain, with France and Bulgaria. It was done in a winery in Champagne region. We've done now, we are doing inspections with Belgium and Lithuania. It's a Christmas tree farm. So you see, this is how we integrate in information campaign, awareness campaign with controls and inspections. About comprehensive operations, yes, we want to follow the whole chain. From a moment a person decides to go to another place to work, from the moment the company decides to go to another country to provide services, to compete in a different market, we want to follow the whole chain and to make sure that citizens, again, workers and companies have informed choices. It's very important. I was in Portugal last week, and I spoke with the Minister of Labor, but this is an issue everywhere. I was in Denmark, everywhere. You will have a competition for workforce in Europe. We already see that we don't have enough workforce for how the economy is growing. So we need to give people the information to make sure that they when they decide to go abroad, they do it, as I say, in a safe way, secure way about their rights, full and secure way about their rights. But also we need companies to inform them about their obligations, because they need these workers. They need these people to come to provide for their activity. So if there will be a competition for workforce, then those employers, and most of them are doing so, who will provide for these rights, then they will have access to a predictable workforce, to transparent, and so on. So our ultimate goal is to have a healthy labor mobility in the EU that will respond to the needs of the society and the economy. And hopefully with actions like this, and we will not only concentrate on agri-food or seasonal workers, we also have hospitality and tourism. That's also a place where Spain has quite a big mobility of workers. But then we will go, of course, in all the other sectors, road transport, construction sector, and so on. So with this, again, I would like to thank the Spanish government for its engagement in all our actions, all our operations. Also to thank social partners for being working with us in this, and then we will do so in the future. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias, Cosmin.
Thank you very much, Cosmin. Thank you very much for your words and for your acknowledgement of the work done by the government of Spain in this very important campaign and the role of the social partners. Thank you very much for being here with us in that effort that is being made, that you've had to make yourself. And now, so that the trade union organizations, as Pedro Rojas said, can speak, and so that their words can reach you. I have no doubt about that. So I'll give the floor to Garbiñe Espejo Gairo, who's the Secretary General of one of the departments of the one of the unions. Welcome to you all, and I would like to thank you for the invitation to participate in this area and in this forum. And I'm sorry that I've lost the sound. Now the sound is back, and now I can hear you. Okay, I want to reiterate once more the commitment and that we want to work in Comisiones Obreras, the trade union, in the synergies in building networks with national authorities and social partners. And our responsibility, sometimes it comes and goes, the sound, I'm sorry. Okay. Well, as I was saying, I would like to thank you for the invitation. I would like to once more insist on the commitment, as it has always been, of our Federation of Comisiones Obreras of Industry, to extend as much knowledge as possible to all the workers, women and men from whatever sector, about their working conditions. I would like to also stress, and particularly, I know that somebody mentioned this before, but I think it's necessary to stress very specific subjects like sexual abuse that temporary workers suffer in their jobs. And I think that is we have to make a very particular effort through labor inspection and through the social partners and trade unions in order to create those welcoming areas for those women, particularly migrant women with more vulnerability, to let them know about their rights and also to fight against this scourge. And since there isn't much time, I would like to bring up a few questions, as you mentioned, to go from facts to action. In Comisiones Obreras for Industry in June, when this project, ELA project, was launched, we celebrated our third Congress at that time. And there we laid down one of the priority goals, which is the modernization and the dignification of the conditions of work of workers, women and men who are seasonal and temporary workers in the transport and agri-food sectors particularly. This priority aim, once more, but we will reinforce our actions as necessary where we need to. And now I would like to convey a critical aspect, because this is the voice of the workers in the field, and it is necessary to convey this. One of the priority actions for Comisiones Obreras Industriales is to recover the negotiation of the state agreement about the countryside. It is not right that we have taifas or sectoral areas where negotiation is fully blocked. Currently, we have around 800,000 workers, women and men, in the agro-food industry. And of that, 75% approximately are men and 25% are women. Well, 70% their salary is equivalent to the interprofessional minimum wage, and in some cases it is below the interprofessional minimum wage. And so with our trade union, Comisiones Obreras Industriales, we're going to work and we're going to reinforce actions in order to recover a state agreement for all the workers in the industry, in the sector, to give coverage where there isn't an updated regulatory framework to improve the working conditions of these people so that it is properly acknowledged in their collective agreement. And another reflection from us, the common, the PAC, the Common Agricultural Policy, CAP, now our organization and other social partners, we have conveyed to the Ministry for Labour and to the Ministry for Agriculture the need that the factor of social conditionality should be compulsory from the start of the coming into force of the CAP. This is since 2023, and not in a voluntary way after 2024 or 2025. The social conditionality opens a window of opportunity so that indeed there is aid that is or subsidies that are given when they need to be received, because the company that hires that worker or that group of people who will be working in the farm will comply with the current legislative framework that exists at any moment in time. Another message for the OPAs, not point out those companies that are not fulfilling the companies, that is somehow to be an accomplice of what is happening in that company. And we will not be at all flexible in this situation. We will take all the necessary actions in collaboration with the work inspection and with the claims made. We will take the necessary measures. And talking, I also share that. I also am missing the Ministry for Agriculture. I was talking about one of the objectives of my organization of Comisiones Obreras Industriales is the modernization of the countryside, the dignification of the labor conditions also. And for that, the social dialogue is necessary. And it is true that everyone is free to decide who you want to sit down with, but not with whom you should sit down and talk, and more so when you have a position that you represent. In some way, Minister Luis Planas, the minister, will get this message somehow, and so I'm saying this, that there's an urgent need to negotiate about the labor conditions of the group of workers in the countryside and the CAP and the social conditions, because we have to go from words to action. The farm workers in the agri-food sector generally have grown tired of listening about health crisis because they have and been and are essential workers. They have sustained and maintained the citizens as a whole, the citizenship as a whole, and the society as a whole. This has to be reflected in labour. And so, as I said before, I make that call to Minister Luis Planes to sit down and negotiate with the social representatives and the trade unions, and we are the valid interlocutors for that. Another mention I want to make is about the recent agreement on the SME. I can't miss out this opportunity, as you will well understand. And we were able, the social partners, governments and trade unions and employers in the pandemic and the alarm in 2020, we were able to reach a crucial agreement for the working classes and the general economy of the country. And that was the decree agreement of ERTE. That is a social protection for workers and direct subsidies also to companies and payments to companies for the social security payments. And this was and is being, and will continue to be, the greatest social shield in order to slow down the impact of the possible loss of employment. And this agreement, as we all know, was supported by government, trade unions, and enterprise. And a few months later, we were surprised to see that they sat down again in order to look at the regulations of equality, to talk about SME. And when we talk about democratizing the labor conditions in the work centers and dignifying the labor conditions of men and women workers with more dignified work, in this case, the COE got out of this photo. That is the employers' organization, because the basket, the shopping basket, has the same price for the person who receives, if they're lucky, 950 euros, or who receive more than that quantity. For that reason, because of social justice, Comisiones Obreras de Industria and the UGT, these two trade unions, supported the agreement of increasing the minimum salary, the SME, and more so in a sector that the salary gap engenders the dependence of women, having rural women being paid less than 950 euros, or if they're lucky, at 950 euros. We are really putting them in an economic dependence situation of those women to the men, and this almost always is the main factor, so that they cannot escape that sexist violence, that abuse that they are suffering in their homes. And this is this goes beyond the subsidies I want to receive as a company. This means that we have to cultivate social responsibility, all of us. And I ask you to think about this, and that the commitment that we take out from this forum and the steps forward that we may take should be with the modernization and the dignification of the labor conditions of women and men workers in the agri-food sector, as well in the industry as a whole. Thank you very much.
Muchísimas gracias.
Well, thank you very much, Carabina. Your proposals and your claims also in the state agreement for the countryside and for the necessary prevention and the punishment of sexual abuse, the CAP, and the gender view that you've also talked to us about in your presentation, as it should be. And now, to close this roundtable, we have Pedro Hojas, the Secretary General of the General Union of Workers of the Federation for Industry and Agriculture. You have the floor. Thank you very much, Mauro. Yes. First of all, I would like to thank the Secretary of State who has just joined us, Joaquin. Thank you very much, and Cosme for waiting a little bit longer. And forgive me for what I said before, but I think it is fundamental, because since we have the European authority here, that they should listen also. And I stress, I'll try not to be repetitive, but I want to clear with the message that we have from both organizations. I will not try not to reiterate, but but I will try to contribute something more. And in this country, we are currently living through a very important natural phenomenon as the volcano in the Canary island of La Palma. And thanks to the measures that were taken and foresight, people's lives are not at risk, but there will be material damage. There will be some very important ones in this sector because there are banana plantations that are being burnt by this natural phenomenon of the volcanic eruption. And I want to invite the farmers from those farms and the workers who are working there, all of our warmth and help that we can provide, and that I know that the authorities and the government is giving in the regional government and the state will be backing them, and the organizations are here for what they may need in order to get the subsidies and help that they need in the societies that are affected. And then, of course, we are all here. My organization is also here in order to reiterate our commitment with this campaign, the European Labour Authority, because we think it is absolutely fundamental to have these kinds of campaigns where what we see, we have to get workers who travel, such a vulnerable group people, such as these workers, have the best possible defense, and this goes through them having the best possible knowledge about the rules, the regulations in the countries where they go to. And because these are groups that are suffering, let's not deceive ourselves, the biggest fraud and the greatest exploitation and the loss of rights that's the greatest that exists in the labor world. And without generalizing, because you cannot generalize, because I'm sure also that we would be sure that would not be just, but in this sector, in the agri-food sector, you don't need to scratch very deep in order to find this. And so I think it is quite right to have this campaign from the European Labour Authority. And I want to point out simply one task that we're taking on, one of the programs in the European Union with our organization and with the trade unions in France and Spain and Italy and Romania. And this is to see the of the European Directive, but I think that is are all actions that are going in the right direction. And I think that this is a first campaign. It is a step forward. It is the first coordinated action from the European Union. We applaud it, but I also have to say I think that it doesn't go far enough. It's fine. It's good. It's a start. Also, I've got some facts that I didn't know that Carmen and Javier explained very well about the work that is being done, but we have to be very ambitious in order to be able to stop what is happening in this sector and with these workers that have traveled. And this happens thanks to information to workers and to employers, and for that, and Carmen said this very well, these workers do not participate, let's not deceive ourselves, they do not have the social shield with their representatives, and we are the trade union representative because of their seasonal nature, because of their lack of knowledge of the language very often, or they don't know how the labor world works in the countries where they travel to, in Spain specifically, and it's fundamental that we all help each other. There's trade union organizations here, we're represented. We can have a fundamental role here, but to reach those workers, it's not easy. These are not stable centers. These are in rural areas, and so we need resources, we need means. I would like to say that we do have those resources. We don't have them. We need those resources, and the administration has the responsibility to ensure that these workers have that information. We offer our help, but we need to collaborate with visiting programs, not just inspecting, but also informing with those workers. And one of the cases that put forward, the campaign that you're doing in France with inspectors recently, not only just a week ago, there was a member of a team who came back, and he goes to the countryside in France every year to inform those Spanish workers who go to France, who are there right now. There's more than 15,000 of them, and every year they continuously going there. I think that is the way to go. And therefore, we have a very important task there. And I think it is a brilliant idea that there should be labor inspectors, that there should be Spanish there, and that other inspectors from other countries, from France and other nationalities, to come to our country, because I think that is the way to go. And indeed, this is a good campaign. It's a good start. But we have to favor those informative measures and give the means and resources necessary in order to carry it out. Our organization is totally committed in this program and in these actions for women and men workers who are displaced. And I think that, and the European Labour Authority is also working on that, and the Spanish authorities, we have to work together to go forward in this way. And as this has been made reference to, and as Caribina mentioned, and this was mentioned by some of the people in the round table in this colloquium, we've mentioned the minimum interprofessional wage, and I think we have to concentrate and know what is really important. What is important is that the farms are viable and that the law is complied in terms of prices that the farmers have to receive for their produce, and that we should be considered as allies in that. We want that to occur, but that cannot be the excuse under any circumstance so that the women and men workers have dignified conditions of work. To make a mistake with the target is an error. What we have to do is to work all together so that the law in the food chain, that there cannot, you cannot have prices below cost, or that the produce that comes from outside the European Union that should not be unfeasible. And we have to require those produce with all the phytosanitary products that we have, and that traceability of those products that come from other countries. If here we require, and we have to demand that and require that the phytosanitary measures have to be complied with, that everything has to be properly regulated. But what we cannot allow is that other products produced from other countries, and we cannot trace, and they have not respected the traceability of those products. There, they will find that they will have our agreement and they will have our help. But to put in the middle of all of this the minimum wage, I'm going to save myself using an adjective to describe that. Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Pedro. Well, indeed, in order to reinforce the European pillar of social work, actions like those mentioned by the executive director of the European Labour Authority are extremely important, and undoubtedly also it is, the idea of fair prices, just prices is essential, which should not go against fair prices, fair wages, but it has to. There has to be a big mobilization for dignity in the countryside, for the fair prices, for the produce of our Mother Earth, and for the conditions, as our Minister for Labour and Social Economy and Deputy President of the Government, the conditions of the seasonality need not be in contradiction with conditions of dignity and of justice in the world of work, and particularly in this sector. I'm not going to make any conclusion because you've left it all very clear, and also particularly because our Secretary of State of Employment is here, and since we're a little bit late on our schedule, although we've made up some time lately, I will give the floor, but before, thank you from the bottom of my heart, and thank all the organizations who are here present today for your participation. Institutional participation, I think this is the best value that we can take away with us, and thank you as always for your presence and for all of your opinions. Thank you indeed. And I'll give the floor to Joaquín Pérez, our Secretary of State for Employment.
Bueno, buen viaje. Hasta la próxima. Sí, tranquilo. Bueno, como estoy convencido que
I'm sure the European Labour Authority has reached all the messages. We've got different ways to make sure they listen to what we are. So, well, can excuse Cosmin's presence, and we want to thank him for being here today with us. Last week we also had the chance to see him and meet with him, and we have also transmit the main priorities of our ministry. First of all, I would like to excuse the Vice President of the government, Ms. Yolanda Diaz, because she couldn't make it due to an issue with her agenda. So I don't know if I will be able to be up to scratch. I'm sure I won't. But I would like to offer you some words on her behalf. I want to thank Gerardo for organizing this event. It's not just an amazing environment in which we are, but I know there's a lot of work behind also Maru, because she, as I see, she's been in charge of all the coordination, and she's been the host as well, and that's something essential. In everything that has to do with seasonal labor, but in everything that has to do with active policies, we are giving Maru a lot of work, and we want that to go on. And I want to thank the Director of Labor Inspection, because she's also key when talking about seasonal works. I also want to thank the ELA for the work and their role in the construction of a more social Europe. Those of us who are used to seeing in Europe or just market relations, the ELA is a way of reinforcing that social fabric that we've always been asking for in Europe. And I want to thank the employer associations and work associations. It's a pleasure to have you here today. I'm sure there are many different reasons for this, to make sure that agri-food is one of the essential sectors in the future. I am sure many of those, or all those of you listening to us today, are aware of how important the agri-food sector was in the midst of the pandemic, when we were all confined in the lockdown. That we could trust we were not going to have a lack of food, and that was thanks to a sector that gave all their best in this probably the hardest situation in this country in recent history. So now is the time to work not just on temporary solutions, but in solid solutions for the future. So it's a pleasure to have you here today defending the agri-food sector. You have a motto, a slogan, which is rights for all seasons, and you have reached all those involved, and companies and employers, workers, and society have made this slogan their own. And we know this is an especially interesting initiative that's taken place in a moment in which all the efforts are looking at a safe and secure society to defend the rights of all the workers, also those who leave their land to work on other lands and that are not their own, or the ones in which they were born or raised. So this campaign means that authorities, both national and European, are committed with the quality of labor in the European Union. I'd like to reinforce this idea. As you know, we will have to undertake what I believe are structural changes in the agricultural sector, changes that whose aim are going to be to improve quality in the labor market, and the country has to be essential for this. This event here today means that institutions trust social agents to make this remuneration a reality. We know we can and we must trust social actors, because you are essential to our economy and our society. You have been essential in this century crisis, in this health crisis we've been going through. You have had the responsibility of reaching national agreements, and we had a chance to tell the director of the ELA, but in just 2 years we have reached 11 agreements involving social actors. I believe this is one of the best eras in social dialogue, and just that on its own is great news. But when this social dialogue has achieved such an amazing results, and when that social dialogue has allowed us to solve the most important crisis in our history, keeping that social protection and keeping our production working and respecting workers' rights and protecting the companies and jobs. I believe that this social dialogue, well, it's going to be successful. There's no way back. And this, I mean, this, of course, we might have difficult times, and we have social actors that are very, very well qualified. I won't try to explain what social dialogue is and what collective bargaining means, but I'm sure there can be many bumps in the road, many different configurations. But I believe that it is clear that we have to keep on working on that social dialogue, and that it will give it its best in everything we still have to do. This campaign is a clear example of reality, because it aspires to make sure that those working in the fields and companies are part of the new reality after the pandemic. And I would like to try to convey three main ideas. Closing sessions are the right moment to reach conclusions, but also to provide hope and to start and open new paths. So I would like to share with you some of these ideas. One, back in June 2019, we approved the we created the ELA. We knew we were crossing a very important threshold in European rights, and in fact that Europe that is talking about minimum wages in all of the European Union, for all of the European Union, was in many cases called just a market Europe with a very small social perspective. And I believe that the ELA and the Director of the fact that our Director of Inspections has sort of a partner in for all of the European Union is great news. In the world we're living today, which is not static anymore, mobility is essential to our lives, and it's such an important part of our lives that when we saw how we lost that mobility in the pandemic, it was probably one of the elements that was hardest for us to understand, not being able to move, not being able to go beyond a normal scope. Sometimes as a professional or sometimes just a personal decision. And in many cases, mobility is the only way out for people to get out of poverty or violence. And we should take that into account as well. So the European regulations, with the help of ELA, guarantee mobility of people, demand equal treatment, and create a precise framework that goes to all different aspects. So nobody can suffer from executing the freedom of movement rights. So these rights of people who move all across Europe has a very clear humane dimension, because the European citizenship doesn't only allow us to move from country to country without a passport, but it allows us to share projects, widen our scopes and grow. So free movement of people who go and work in the agricultural sector is something that's just part of the European reality, but it should also let us look at those who are knocking on our doors, on the European doors, because that work in the agricultural sector shows the strains between our European reality and those who see they're out of legal protection, no matter where they come from. And these rights for all seasons from the ILA is especially important. It goes beyond freedom of movement within the European Union, because it vertebrates the social dimension in Europe with its own citizenship. But it expands its action to all those who are carrying out agricultural jobs, may them be nationals, Europeans, or of those who are out of that come from out of the European Union, defending the rights of these people working in the agricultural sector. The ELA is contributing to a more social Europe, starting with the right of movement, which is one of the basic rights here. The ELA is contributing to building a Europe that puts people at the core of their activities, and that's why we are here today. The second idea I wanted to share with you is linked to the situation of walking in the countryside in Spain and elsewhere, it's essential. It's being very clear within or during the pandemic, but the importance of the agricultural sector in Spain, I mean, it accounts for a huge part of our economy, and it's one of the reasons why we are most famous for. And it's also marked by its harshness, and we don't normally value it for what it's worth. And within the pandemic, we have seen that valuing the work of people, especially those who took care of us, those who took care of our health and fed us, it's extremely important. And that's probably one of the things that we will never forget in the pandemic. But we found out that simple works and simple jobs, those that allow us to keep on living, are works that are essential. They shouldn't be hidden. And those are the jobs we cannot just forget about or treat them badly. This campaign on seasonal workers reminds us that those who carry out this work have the same rights as those who carry out other activities, the same rights. Social actors who are here today and are part of this campaign and who fight for the quality of agri-food companies and to improve working conditions and life conditions participate, are part of this same campaign. This European campaign, headed by the ELA, wants to defend freedom of movement for those who work in the agricultural sector, both to guarantee their movement and their rights once they are working in those different nations. The EURES network is essential for seasonal work in the countryside because the public coordination of transit also guarantees dignity and fair competition between companies. Public defense in that transit allows for workers to understand their rights, but it's also a very powerful tool against illegal workers or illegal labor, because it not only does it go against citizens' rights, but it also has an impact on the rest of the society. That's why I would like to mention the implication of the Directorate of Inspection to fight against illegal labor in all the sectors, working in coordination with the European network. And I know that one of the main activities of the European Labour Authority is to go against illegal jobs. And one of the last ideas I want to share with you, and I don't want to, I mean, the bad thing about organizing things in such a beautiful place that the speaker gets to a moment in which you want to be part of the environment so much that you probably lengthen your speech too much, but I'm trying to make sure this is not the case. Third thing I wanted to share with you within this campaign from the ELA is that this is very important to advance in a labor market in the countryside, in the agricultural sector, that's based on healthy conditions. I want to mention how welcome this ELA campaign has been, and we see a very intense collaboration in which the different entities have been a loudspeaker for this campaign, and they've been able to expand and extend and disseminate the message of all the other entities. And it's been a great meeting point for all those involved in quality jobs in the agricultural sector. An example is this event today that's been good for all the social actors to work for these honorable objectives. It's also been extremely good to increase collaboration between the different countries of the European Union. A great example is the collaboration, or the joint collaboration between the Spanish inspection and the French inspection entities on Spaniards who are working in the French countryside. That's something that's been happening for many generations, and we must ensure their rights. I would like to mention the huge importance of labor inspection in the consolidation of fair labor in the countryside, and I am sure that both unions and employer associations are aware of the importance of this work, the work of labor inspection, and they have had an extremely important ally, which is the ELA. Collaboration between different countries allows inspection to work to deploy information and to allow institutions to get closer to the reality of workers and companies. But this campaign on seasonal rights and seasonal workers is a space for dialogue. This event today that includes all social actors, a great example. We know that just from collaboration and dialogue would be possible to reach a reality that will make us better both at an economic level, on a financial level, and as human beings. And this campaign shows the social dimension of the different actors, but it also shows that we are committed with quality jobs in the countryside and life in countryside, fair work and healthy companies in the agricultural sector are a guarantee for the future and will allow us to build a Spanish countryside that will feed us in every possible sense. Thank you very much for your attention.